Copper, a conductive case. Copper has been used for over 10,000 years. Its origins begin in the ancient world, used in weapons, artwork, and buildings. It's malleable and ductile, with excellent thermal and conductive properties, making it a unique metal. Copper is used in alloys like bronze and brass. With its highly useful properties, copper can be utilized in electrical wiring, building construction, electronics manufacturing, automotive and transportation, and industrial machinery. Copper ore is mined and refined multiple times to engineer a product consisting of 99.9% copper. Refining the ore is a costly and time-consuming procedure requiring high energy levels. Demand certainly drives supply in this competitive market. Global consumption has increased by about 99% over the last 25 years. Factors for this rise include global increase in spending on infrastructure and construction and the development and manufacturing of new electronics with copper components. In order to properly understand this market, it's best to visualize consumers as entire nations. The three key nations who have played a major part in the movement of market demand over the last 25 years are China, the United States, and Japan. Currently, China is the largest player in the market, accounting for 50.2% of copper consumption, while the U.S. accounts for 7.6% and Japan 4.2%. This was not always the case. In the early and mid-1990s, the U.S. and Japan were the two largest copper consumers and combined to make up 33.2% of global consumption. Throughout the 1990s and until 2002, the United States consumed more copper than any other nation. Today, the U.S. is the second largest consumer. Its consumption goes against market norms as it's driven by the construction industry. The consumption of copper in the U.S. shows a strong relation to its successful economic growth in the 90s and early 2000s. However, events post-2000, such as the bursting of the dot-com bubble, war on terror, and great financial crisis, stymied economic growth and copper demand. Unlike the U.S., Japan's copper demand is focused away from their construction industry. The copper demand lost in construction is regained in electrical and car manufacturing. During the late 20th century, car manufacturing was sky high in Japan. Since the early 2000s, copper usage in Japan has continued to decrease. Today, copper demand is dominated by China. Chinese copper consumption accounted for over 50% of global demand in 2017. In the 1990s, however, China's consumption was just 2%. China's demand for copper has been driven by its electrics industry, which accounts for almost 49% of its consumption. This does not mean to say that China's construction industry does not play a significant role in global consumption. This industry accounted for roughly 10% of global copper use in 2015. In the 1980s, China's shift in its economic strategy has led to significant economic growth. This was over 10% in the early 2000s. Since 2012, China's growth rate has dropped significantly to just below 7% annually, which is reflected in the overall decrease in the demand and price of copper. Today, the major suppliers of copper are Chile, Peru, and China. Chile dominates the mining and supply of copper. The country produces 27% of the world's copper, while Peru is responsible for 12% and China 8%. The major players have changed over the last 25 years. In 1995, the U.S. supplied 16% of the world's copper, positioned as the world's second largest supplier. Today, the U.S. produces only 6%. Worldwide copper reserves have increased over 2.5 times since 1995. This increase is mainly accounted for by discoveries in Chile, Australia, Peru, Mexico, and China. Chile still boasts the world's largest ore supplies. Over the last 15 years, costs associated with mining and refining copper have grown dramatically. China's reduction in growth has led to demand concerns. However, consumption may increase significantly due to a global movement towards electric vehicles and other technologies. Electric cars are known to contain about 60 kilograms of copper, as opposed to the 23 kilograms that are in combustion engine cars. China, who boasts the world's largest automotive industry, will further drive demand of electric vehicles. Copper is a finite resource, and as copper ore grades sink lower and lower, concerns are warranted about the lasting supply of the metal. Citigroup's research forecast states that the current copper reserves would last for approximately 40 years. Also, with new improvements in technology, more developed recycling, and enhanced economies of scale, there is a significantly lower chance that the world will run out of copper.
So what is the solution to this conductive case? In question 1, we find that today's market equilibrium is a result of an acceleration of China's GDP and improvement of its Manufacturing Purchasing Managers Index. Those macroeconomic numbers imply an increase of China's income and hence a shift to the right in the demand. The strike in March 2017 at Chile's Escondida mine, the world's largest copper mine, damaged the supply, moving the curve to the left. Given that copper usage increased to 23.5 million tonnes in 2017 and the price to USD 6,200 per tonne, the right shift in the demand curve had a more significant impact than the left shift in the supply curve. Question 2 raises some interesting shifts in the curves. By following the economic way of thinking, we see that the demand is affected by the price of substitute goods, tastes, and the number of buyers. Supply is affected by the price of inputs, technology improvements, the natural environment, and the number of sellers. There has been a strong correlation between Chinese economic growth and copper consumption. Although China is not necessarily consuming these goods, they are using copper to produce many of the products that it exports. They also use a great deal of copper in construction. In terms of supply, improvements in technology and an increased number of sellers, such as Chile, Peru, and Australia, shifts the supply curve to the right. Since 1995, copper prices have quadrupled and usage has doubled. This means that the demand shift to the right was more significant than the supply shift. As can be seen by the graph, supply has shifted considerably to the right. This means 1. Price will increase from USD 1,608 per tonne in 1995 to USD 6,200 per tonne in 2017. And 2. Quantity will increase from 11.85 million tonnes in 1995 to 23.49 million tonnes in 2017. Question 3 requires some insight into future curves. By following the economic way of thinking, we see that demand is influenced by income, tastes, number of buyers, and the price of substitute goods. Supply is affected by the price of inputs, technology improvements and economies of scale, and the natural environment. The markets expect China to grow at a slower pace, indicating a shift to the left in demand. However, demand will shift to the right, as is being driven by the increased demand for electric vehicles, more market participants, and fewer copper substitutes. Enhanced mining procedures, automation, and superior economies of scale will move the supply curve to the right. Finally, equilibrium will be set at a higher usage and price reduction of 7%. Therefore, we predict that 1. Price will decrease from USD 7,100 per tonne in 2018 to USD 6,600 per tonne in 2020. And 2. Quantity will increase from 23.6 million tonnes in 2018 to 24.6 million tonnes in 2020. Now Jessica, if you're watching, I hope that clears up the conductive case of copper for you, and I wish you all the best with your career in the future. Thank you.